Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we're checking out a pedal that, as you've already heard from the intro, is great for adding a bit of a funk edge to your tone. Now this is a bit of an unusual pedal that I'm guessing most of you won't have heard of, and they can be a little bit hard to come by, but nonetheless a great pedal. I am of course talking about the Pigtronix EP2 envelope phaser. So as the name suggests, this is both an envelope filter and a phaser all together in one box. Now looking at the pedal, it can seem a bit daunting at first, but actually when you get into it, it's not as bad as it seems. So let's talk about the controls. So the knobs are actually quite nicely grouped with what they affect. So your sensitivity control controls your sensitivity for your envelope filter. Your three knobs in the middle, depth, center and speed, are then your controls for the phaser. And then your resonance control is just an overall resonance control. And like on any other amp, that gives you control over your low end. You've then also got these 5 dip switches. So staccato, when that's on, means that the envelope filter just, I guess, bounces back. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but it lets you play sort of your more funk licks and your faster playing, and just means that you get more of that wacka wacka thing going on. Whereas when it's switched off, it takes a little bit more time for the envelope filter to come back and respond to your next note you're playing. You've then got EF sweep, up and down, which I'll demonstrate in a minute, but that's fairly self-explanatory and just sort of controls the way in which the envelope filter sweeps. You've then got the blend control. Now this is the first of 2 controls which alters what one of the knobs does. So when the blend control is switched on, obviously as you would expect, blend means that you've got both effects running together, but it also means that your depth control then becomes a blend control and gives you control over the level of each of the effects relative to one another. So going all the way clockwise on that knob when you're in the blend mode gives you all of the phaser, and vice versa, going all the way counterclockwise gives you all of the envelope filter. You've then got LFO smoothing, which again takes control, this time of the resonance control. And what that basically does is takes the resonance control out of the circuit for when you're using the LFO mode. And then finally you have invert, positive and negative. And what this is doing is controlling which effects comes first in your chain. If you think of them like 2 separate pedals, when you're in the plus mode, it's running first into the envelope filter, then in the phaser, and when you're in negative mode, they switch and you're running first into the phaser and then into the envelope filter. A few other features to mention just while we're looking at the pedal itself. You've got EF trigger, so what that means is you can put a different signal into the pedal and then that takes over the control of your envelope filter rather than the input. You've then got the sweep pedal input, and what that allows you to do is connect an expression pedal and use this more like a wah phaser rather than an envelope filter. And then you've got your speed pedal, which again lets you put an expression pedal in and controls the rate of your LFO or your phaser. So that's a look through the controls, and hopefully that makes sense and you don't think that it's too daunting now that I've explained things a bit. So let's go through some tones. Today you're hearing my Fender Telecaster going obviously into the EP2, and then I'm running that into my Laney K35, which is a solid state, very clean amp from the 70s. For all intents and purposes, think of it like a jazz chorus, but without the chorus. But like I said, it's very clean. And so without the EP2 kicked in, it sounds something like this in the middle position. And then kicking in the EP2 with the same settings that you heard in the intro, it sounds like this. So I'm now going to switch off the blend mode and we'll have a look at just the envelope filter to start with. So really for the envelope filter, you've got your staccato control and your EF sweep controls, as well as your sensitivity. So sensitivity is fairly self-explanatory. When you turn it all the way up, it's more sensitive and you get more of that envelope filter effect going on. And then when you turn it down, so that's with staccato mode on. I'm just going to whack the sensitivity back up to where I had it. If I now turn staccato mode off and then try and play fast, it doesn't react in quite the same way. Whereas if I switch it back on, so as I said earlier, it's just kind of controlling how quickly it comes back. The only other thing you get here is the EF sweep. So what you've just heard is with it in up mode, and then if I switch it to down mode, then it sounds more like this. So you can hear it kind of reverses and it opens up rather than closing down. So now let's move over to the phaser side of things and have a look at that. So these will be fairly self-explanatory. So when it comes to a phaser, you know what depth and speed do. So depth with it all the way up, and then with it most of the way down. And obviously speed controls the rate. But what you do also have on this pedal is the center control. Now what the center control does is it determines where in the audio spectrum the LFO is working. It should just be pointed out that when you've got the depth control all the way up, then it doesn't do anything. But I'll leave the depth about halfway up, and then with the center all the way down, it sounds something like this. And then with it all the way up. So hopefully you can hear, as I move that knob, you can hear it affecting slightly differently where it's oscillating. But I tend to just leave that in the middle. We've then got the LFO smoothing control, which affects the LFO side. So if I turn the resonance up, you can hear it gets sort of a little bit more low end and you get a bit more of an aggressive oscillation. And then turning the LFO smoothing on, it takes that resonance control out of the circuit. So that's both sides of this pedal independently, and then if we just switch the blend over, and then you get them both together. Now with the exception of the depth control, as I said, all of the controls that I've just shown you work exactly the same. But with the depth in completely in the middle, it sounds something like this. And then with the depth all the way down, you can hear it's almost all envelope filter. If I give it a little bit more, then you're starting to get a little bit more phaser in there, and obviously the opposite is true. If I go most of the way this way, then it's almost all phaser. And then really the final thing to show you is that is with it in the invert plus position. So that is envelope filter first, then phaser. Flipping it round, and it sounds more like this. But there you go, so that's a look at the Pigtronix EP3 envelope phaser. Now with this being a bit more of a complicated video, it's kind of a bit harder for me to get across to you just all of the tonal possibilities that this pedal has. So I hope it's translated to you guys through YouTube fairly well. Obviously let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let me know if you've had any experience with any of the Pigtronix stuff, because they are a cool brand that do some really interesting things, but you don't really hear of them that often. But that just about does us for today. So as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.